Hello? Hello? Are you live?
No.
Okay.
You have room, huh? That's the camera, remember?
Oh, right.
Oh no, are we not, is we not connected? Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah, there.
Hello.
Hello.
Wait, we're still there. Hello.
Hi, everyone.
So we'll wait for some people to come in.
Yeah, we'll wait for people to come in and join the live.
But when I sit here, I can't see the computer.
Why do you want to see the computer?
Because then I like seeing how many people we have.
Okay, how about if I angle it like this? Can you see better?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone. We'll give it a little
Hello,
bit
so,
more for people to
yeah.
join us.
What's your skin size on?
Our skin sites today is on the signs of COVID on the skin. Did you know that?
No.
COVID can actually cause some symptoms on the skin, and for one of them at least, it can help with diagnosis of COVID.
Really?
The other ones happen a little too late, but there's
They're
one
early.
in particular that can happen early. And then we're going to be talking, because there's some skin conditions where people take like drugs called biologics, and those things can cause a suppression of the immune system. So then the question is, if you're on those drugs and they lower your immune system a little bit, can you take the COVID vaccine? So we're going to be addressing that today because it's kind of an important question.
Also, do you like the new light?
Hi, Teacher Nika's here.
Hello.
Hi, Teacher
Hi.
Nika from Thailand. I think you're still there, yeah? Why come here? Tita Nina's there, Tita Casey's there.
Hello.
Hi. If you're just joining us, we will be talking about signs of COVID on the skin and whether or not you should be vaccinated, particularly if you are on biologics for things like psoriasis. Let us know if you're here. Say hello.
Say hello.
Certainly let us know where you're watching from because it can affect stuff that we share. And also we just want to hear from you. And let me know actually if you can see us and hear us well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, again, do you like the lights? Because it's a new thing.
No, you know I had to put up lights here because we normally do it over there, but something's wrong with the sofa. So we now had to do it back here and we're in shadow. So
Yeah.
Jenna's here. Hello.
Hello.
There. So Teacher Nika's here.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
I don't
Yeah,
know if
so
you can
this is
see
going to be a
but
fairly
they're
serious topic. Important. So I'm actually happy that we're doing it because it's a matter of public health. What are you doing?
I'm playing with the vines.
You're playing with the vines. Okay, just don't hurt it.
Can I just show? Like just a bit, like right here?
I mean, I don't know if
Huh.
it'll reach. I think people can see the vine, honey.
Can you?
Good morning, Elle. We have Beth and Jen. Morning
Hello,
from
good morning.
Pasig. Hello. Oh my goodness. Okay, so we have two people from
This is very
Pasig.
distracting.
And Jenna, I know, is in the U.S. Nika, I think, is in Thailand.
very
The other day, my cousin told me she was watching from New Jersey and didn't say anything. I was like, you were such a lurker. Okay, why don't we start? Because it's it's a medically complex topic today. The light is beautiful, says Teacher Nika,
Thank
as is the two
you.
of you.
Ah, thank you.
Love you, Nika. Okay, so we will be starting because it is a rather medically complex topic today. I won't be actually talking that much about it. I'll leave my mom to kind of go into it. But welcome to our skin sites on skin and COVID-19, particularly signs of COVID-19 that manifest on the skin, and also we'll touch on vaccines because there are certain skin conditions like psoriasis where people use biologics, and biologics can be immunosuppressive, and so there are questions about if you are on a biologic or an immunosuppressant drug, can you be vaccinated?
So remember to ask your comments. Remember to ask your questions early in the comment section so that we can answer them later, and it's easier for us to answer them.
Yes. Especially for VMV stuff, make sure to ask before, after my mom is here, because when she's here, we want to maximize her medical time. And if you... What, darling?
Go up. Go up.
We will be giving away, at the end of the live stream, a pocket-sized Node oil, which
our
is...
best-selling, clinically published organic, first and cold pressed virgin coconut oil.
Say that 10 times fast. It's our clinically published organic first and cold pressed virgin coconut oil on which we're actually doing a study for mild to moderate COVID. So Yeah, definitely let us know your questions. Please do comment and ask anything because it increases your chances of winning. And then getting into this very briefly, a year into COVID, um, I didn't think we'd need to talk about this again, but with vaccines finally rolling out, and yet with so many spikes in different countries, and with so many questions about vaccines, we thought this was important to do. Before I get into that quickly, Gavin wants to remind you.
So don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram. Of course, both of them are at VMV Hypoallergenics. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel, again, VMV Hypoallergenics, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on any new videos.
There you go. Hi, Joanne and BF Homes.
Hello.
And hi, Jen. Yes, I know. I live on Noah oil as well. We eat it too. So, okay, getting
We do.
briefly into our topic today, and I'll leave really the bulk of it to my mom because it is much more medical. COVID-19 can affect the skin, but this is kind of the most important thing to remember. Do you want to read that?
Yeah. Any skin changes should always be considered with other factors such as exposure, patient history, and other symptoms.
Right, so it's not just looking at these signs that potentially could imply COVID that happen on the skin. The entire patient has to be considered. Exposure, history, and other symptoms.
Yeah,
So
I have to
some,
go.
okay, love,
My call
I love
started.
you. Mwah. Thank you for joining us. Some associated manifestations on the skin of COVID-19 include something we've already discussed in previous live streams, actually, which is it has to do with the hair and it has to do with extreme stress. And Brownie people remember. What do you think happens? Yeah, no, it doesn't become blonde. For those that don't remember, telogen effluvium is temporary hair loss. So after giving birth, in times of extreme stress, even just getting a very bad sickness, certainly with chemo, you can lose your hair. With telogen effluvium, what happens is the follicles get so shocked or annoyed, this is not the medical explanation, that they basically stop producing hair. And then when the body starts to normalize, then they start producing it as well. That's telogen effluvium. The other thing that kind of was in the news, and to me was the first thing I heard about, was something called COVID toes, which is chilblain-like lesions. They're red to purple discolorations that can appear usually on the feet, sometimes on the hands. The thing is, they tend to occur later in the progression of the disease. But there's been a lot of reports of these COVID toes already, and they can sometimes have blisters, sometimes also be painful. In more severe disease, what seems to be rather common is what's called maculopapular eruptions or maculopapular rashes, which are small red bumps all over the body or flat red patches. And one study in Spain that I read, 47% of 375 patients who had COVID-related symptoms had this type of rash. But again, it tends to happen later. What I found more interesting, because it happens earlier and can therefore help potentially with diagnosis, is hives or urticaria. Those are those raised, itchy patches, make you look like a map almost, that appear on the skin. There was a study in China and Italy with 4 hospitals, and it was 26% who had hives. The big caution here is obviously hives and urticaria can be caused by a bunch of things. They can be an allergic reaction to something. They can even be a reaction to stuff used to treat COVID, like steroids and such. So again, I won't get into that. I'll leave my mom to get into that. But before getting into that, some quick reminders. Number one, while vaccines are thankfully rolling out, some countries are reporting spikes and new strains that are quite virulent. So please remember to remain vigilant, even if you have been vaccinated. For our teams, for example, we are really being strict and sort of doubling down on our safety protocols in our lab, in our clinic, which include, and I've spoken about this before, and you can watch a video on this on YouTube, and we have an article on it in vmvinskin.com, where we cleanse first with a cleanser that contains SLS or SLES, like a lot of our cleansers have. The reason for that is SLS and SLES are also coconut derivatives and great antimicrobials. We then follow with monolaurin gel on the hands, for us, up into the elbows even, making sure to get under the nails and stuff. It could be id monolaurin gel or kid gloves. And then we finish off with no-wood oil. And the no-wood oil we apply up the nostrils, in our mouths, we gargle with it, even put it in our ears, and we put it in our hands, under our nails, up until the elbows. So that's something that you can look up if you're interested. Also, of course, follow your doctor's instructions as always. And it also, all of this means still wearing a mask. So do check out our live stream on maskne. We did a recent live stream with updates on maskne as well as mastitis, which is contact dermatitis, two PPEs. And then we have a video on maskne as well. As a reminder, in case you are interested in more of this, we have a great review on the many studies on monolaurin and virgin coconut oil dating back to the 1960s and 70s on vmvinskin.com. And you can shop all our validated hypoallergenic products, the majority of which contain monolaurin and our clinically published coconut oil, at vmvhypoallergenics.com internationally, vmvhypoallergenics.ph in the Philippines. And just some quick news, we are offering Afterpay in the US now and Route to better protect your purchases and to give you time to pay. In the Philippines, Gcash is now available. And in the Philippines, if you'd like a teleconsultation with my mom or other dermatologists or nutritionists that we work with, drop us a PM. And everywhere, remember that if you've had a patch test and are still really confused about what you can and cannot use, drop us a PM, share your patch test results with us, and we can help customize recommendations for you based on your particular allergens. I'll be calling in my mom really soon to talk about COVID in the skin, but crucially, vaccines for people with psoriasis and or who are on biologics. Raise your hands and definitely ask the question here because that's important. My mom will also be sharing some key points from Dermatological Society's position papers on this. And on that note, I will call in my mom, who is our founding dermatopathologist, to help us understand more of this. Hi, Mom.
Hi.
How are you?
How are you?
Good. Ooh, you have peanut butter on your shirt.
Well, at least you know I have a healthy breakfast.
That's true. We make our own peanut butter, just so we're clear. We do. That's the camera right there.
Hi.
So, as a dermatopathologist, I've mentioned this before, she does tend to see some more serious cases and definitely has many patients on biologics, right? So I know she's been especially keen on guidelines for vaccines for patients on biologics. As you know, she also has a big researcher's brain with all these published studies and such. So she's been on top of the latest findings on COVID in the skin and immunocompromised conditions. Plus, she's in a high-risk group herself. So I'm looking forward to her input here, which I thought would be extremely helpful. So please do keep your questions coming because I think this is a great opportunity to get them answered. Hello.
Hello there.
Say hi to everybody.
You look great, darling.
Oh, thank you. So do you. Peanut butter and all. So yeah, we do make our own peanut butter and it only contains peanuts. This is just a tip. It's really nice. Okay.
Dry roasted.
Yeah. So I've shared some of the symptoms of COVID that manifest on the skin.
Okay.
Can you give us a better overview of
Okay.
what those are?
As an introduction, let me tell you first that because we're going to be talking about COVID today, I decided to wear these earrings because this is a representation of how that COVID virus looks like.
Okay.
With the corona spikes there, and in the center would be the genes, the DNA or the RNA. Okay.
There's so much space there.
So-
I need you to eat up that space. You're so close
And here,
here. Yeah, move.
move.
There.
How's that?
Much
Okay,
better, okay.
wonderful. Okay. So the question about rashes. Tell you what, early last year, 2020, I had a patient who is an old psoriasis patient of mine, and who came to me about, let's say, end of April or end of May last year, and said, I have rashes and they don't look like psoriasis. And he said, but it could be psoriasis, you know. So anyway, I took a look at them and they looked like psoriasis, but didn't quite look like psoriasis. And then, so therefore, looking into his history about any symptoms that he may have, he did have a little bit of cold and a little bit of low-grade fever, but it went away in a day. I mean, you know, it was nothing, and so no problem in the house. And however, I said, okay, you want another injection. He came back actually for his follow-up injection of a biologic, which is one of those targeted new treatments for psoriasis. I said, let's do the RT-PCR first for you to find out if you in fact have, and it turned out it was COVID. And it turned out that rash that he had really was not his psoriasis either. Because what I did was I cleared his psoriasis first, his COVID first for about a month and a half that he was not coming, and we just waited for everything to come down. And then after that, I believe because of all the stresses that were going on, he then began to have lesions that really were his old psoriasis lesions. Having said that, therefore, in the literature, the very first rashes that were described that associated with COVID is from Italy, and it was on Urticaria, hive-like rashes. And this seems to be a common thing. You know, it is. They are like hives, and it's very difficult to guess whether this is really due to COVID or not, simply because you can get hives from many other
so many things.
Drugs that you're taking, food, or recurrent hives from other causes. So hives, and then they're common, but even more common are what are called the maculopapular erythematous patches of.
Folks, repeat after me. Maculopapular erythematous, what?
Patches.
Patches.
Plaques and patches.
Say that 10 times fast.
They can look like psoriasis. They can look
Maculopapular
like
erythematous
the contact dermatitis. They can look like other kinds of common and not so common skin diseases of the body.
So
But the
maculopapular
point is,
means
and
what?
they're much more popular. Okay. Erythematous just means
Swelling.
it has become
Red.
red, but is not swollen.
Right, sorry.
Erythematous, just a reddening of the skin, but it's not swollen like a hive. Okay.
Got it.
So then, what's erythematous, and then
Maculopapular.
maculopapular means it's still macules are flat red, but then it's becoming elevated. Papule means just elevated. And then they are more extensive, and so confluent is what we call them.
Papule more like almost a pimple, but not quite. But that's the kind of raising she's talking about,
That's right.
not the swelling
Right.
from hives,
Right.
right?
Right.
And not necessarily blisters like
Right.
from eczematous conditions. Okay.
So
we're
if you're
clear.
developing them all of a sudden, it could really be just due to an allergy to the things that are in your vicinity or in your home or that you're applying on your skin. But don't take it for granted, because it might be especially if you're starting to have a little bit of sniffle here and there. And remember, there are asymptomatic COVID cases. It seems to be the more common kind of rash that is seen.
Right. But it
It's-
happens also later,
Right.
right? So it's not so helpful in diagnosing COVID per se.
No, but they are things that you should become more aware of, that there are in fact skin lesions that can precede COVID and can appear actually earlier than COVID, so that if you were able to pick it up, your suspicion is very strong, and the blood test is done, they might be able to
Get
pick
ahead
it
of
up
it.
quite early.
What's
then,
that? Because I thought that this maculopapular thing happened later in the disease.
No, they don't.
It
They
happens
occur
early.
earlier as well as later.
There you go.
know,
Okay,
right.
so if you
It's
see
the
a random
urticaria
rash,
which comes a little bit earlier.
yeah,
Okay.
okay.
And then the next one is actually like eczema. They're called papulovesicular, like little bubbles with rushes that are like this and scattered.
Vesicular, think vesicles, right?
Vesicles, like
think
bubbles.
Bubbles.
Yeah, and they're not as common, but they can also occur. And again, the message I'm trying to say is, if you have rashes that don't seem to be like what they are, or you've never had them before, but all of a sudden you're getting them, and it's kind of hard to get rid of them. Well, don't just get a medicine that you've been using for some other things, or an antifungal or whatever. Better see a doctor, or
Right.
at least make notice of your other symptoms that
Yeah.
may not be also usual
Yeah.
with you.
What I was going to say is, remember in the beginning of the live stream, what I actually said is, even if you're looking for these symptoms on skin,
Yeah.
don't take them in a vacuum.
Right.
Consider your exposure, your risk of exposure,
Right.
possible contact, and other symptoms that you might have. Remember,
Right.
COVID has many more symptoms than we initially thought.
That's right.
We thought it was just a cough,
Right.
but now stomach is involved, right?
Right.
It could be a whole host of things. So if you start seeing those symptoms, don't be so dismissive. Don't be paranoid, but do
And
take
remember,
care.
the skin is such a mirror of what's going on in your body. So don't ignore what the skin is trying to tell you. In other words, listen to your skin as well. Okay. The other ones that are rashes that are seen also in COVID are ones that tend to come a little bit later already, like the chilblains in children that are usually more common in children.
Yeah.
You find them mostly on the toes, for instance, and the feet and on the fingers occasionally. Those are called chilblains. They look like they've been in the cold and they become bluish, reddish little areas there.
Yeah.
Not
or
so
or
common.
like you banged it, right? They
Right.
look almost bruise-like.
Right,
is what
right,
they're, yeah.
right. And then I don't know if you people are familiar with this thing called livido, reticularis, so reticulated.
Of course.
Or
Who isn't familiar?
racemosa.
Who isn't familiar with livido
Reticularis,
Reticularis.
or racemosa.
every other day? It's such a headache.
You know, when you've been, you can take a look at your skin, especially on the legs, and you get this funny network kind of uh, chains in the skin. That's been also described in.
I'm sorry. I actually don't understand that. What is
livido.
it? Livido,
Livido,
reticularis.
livid. When you.
So it's bright or
Right.
vibrant. Reticularis means like a network? Is it
a-
like a net
yeah, like
type-
a network, like a weave,
like a spider web?
like a spider weave of
Okay.
tiny little vessels, like configuration there. And sometimes when you get cold in the winter and when you remove your clothes, you may get that livido kind of thing, or livido racemosa.
What you might associate, if any of you have rosacea, when my rosacea flares up, my capillaries almost look like
Something
this,
like that.
a little like that,
A
just to
little
give
like
you an idea of what
Right.
to look for.
Okay. And then the other one would be the vasculitis. That is the most, that's a trigger for you to begin to worry about this might be a more serious, a more severe kind of a COVID. Vasculitis, little red spots that are vasculitic, because they signal inflammation of the capillary vessels that leak out, therefore, red cells, and therefore you have those.
Okay, so
things.
backing up a little bit, things maybe to look for, right? If you're concerned, first of all, first and foremost, if you're being extremely good, you're really wearing your mask, but properly wearing your mask every single time you go out. If you are wearing your face shield regularly, if you're practicing social distance, even at work, if you're not doing things like taking a photo and removing your mask, keep the mask on, okay? If you're doing all of those things and practicing a very, very good, consistent safety protocol when you come home and when you go to the office and such, and regularly wash your hands and do the the disinfectant, you do have less of a chance of catching this disease. I feel like it's important to say those practices are proven to work. So as long as you're being so good about that, you actually are pretty safe, okay? If, however, there's a chance, maybe I wasn't so careful, or I just found out that someone I work with has tested positive or has symptoms, then yeah, start looking at yourself and other symptoms that you may have, the classic COVID symptoms, but also potentially this rash, skin changes that appear that sort of are surprising. They don't seem to respond to the
Itchy-
regular stuff, itchy stuff,
hives.
red dots,
Yeah.
and hives.
Right.
Hives seems to be a good thing to look for. Urticaria, those raised map-like welts, right, that happen on your skin.
Patches that look a little thicker, but
Yeah.
not quite like psoriasis.
There you
know,
go.
Things like that.
Things that can look like a spider web on the skin.
There you go.
Red dots on the skin that can imply a vasculitis. Then definitely don't be so dismissive. Don't freak out. But when you're talking to your doctor, right, to say, hey, I think I have some symptoms or I had some exposure, don't dismiss the skin changes.
Let me give you another
Right?
tip.
Mention the skin changes.
Let me give you another tip. The beauty about dermatology is that you can actually take pictures of these and send them to your dermatologist and say, I'm developing this. Is it time? Should I be consulting you about it? Right? Because the dermatologist, thank God for our visual kind of a specialty, we can make a diagnosis at least initially, or have you really come to the office? But it can be, a big suspicion can be raised and considered.
Right. So again, I'm going to just keep doubling down on this. Double down on your protection and your preventive practices.
Excellent.
Don't get lax because they really are so effective.
Right.
If you have symptoms or if you suspect a possible exposure, don't dismiss the skin changes. So when you're talking to your doctor, don't just give, oh, I have a cough, I have whatever, and ignore the skin stuff. That might be important, so share it. And if you're seeing a dermatologist, it's a good idea to talk to your dermatologist about this. And in that case, don't dismiss your other symptoms, right? Tell them you're feeling fatigue or shortness of breath or whatever, because yeah, the skin can help narrow the diagnosis for COVID or not, right? And then of course an RT-PCR might be called for. We have about 5 minutes to go into, because we have so many great questions. I want to make sure we touch on first. Someone did ask the question I knew would be asked, which is the differences of vaccines. Thank you, Sarge. And good morning, Anne and Nix. Yay. I want to make sure we touch on, if I'm on biologics, like I was on a drug called anakinra at one point, I was on etanercept. If you're on, what are the famous ones?
Humira,
adalimumab,
and of course the newer ones, which are more specific for psoriasis, secukinumab and
There.
ustekinumab and Tremfya.
What wonderful names. If you are on any of these drugs, if you're taking biologics, should they get the vaccine?
Yes.
Sorry, and let me explain that question. I said it earlier, but in case some people came in late. When you do these biologics, they're phenomenal drugs. They're really rather miraculous, but they are immunosuppressives, right? That's why they're so careful to check, are you traveling to a place with tuberculosis and all this stuff? So the question now becomes, if I'm on immunosuppressants like biologics, necessarily so, which are great drugs, can I take the vaccine?
Yes.
Okay.
As a matter of fact,
Very
there are lots of lengthy articles, and in our country, and I'm sure in your country, and coming from the WHO and the CDC abroad, there are already guidelines about the fact that if you are taking these, if you're old like me with certain of these vaccines, you can in fact take the vaccine, and it would help you as well as, of course, the frontliners. And then, not yet for children, 16-year-old and
But
above.
let's talk first about the
Okay.
biologics specifically, right?
Yes, for the biologics, yes. When you're taking cyclosporin or any of the methotrexate and whatever, you can also have the vaccine.
Right. Still in all, check with your doctor because every case is different. You might have comorbidities or you might have other factors that your doctor decides, maybe we'll wait, right?
You must have a test for RT-PCR though, to be sure that you don't have COVID and are having yourself injected with the vaccine.
Okay.
So that's an important
that's a big tip.
prerequisite.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's a big tip. Is that for everybody or just if you're on immunosuppressive
We're talking about
drugs?
the drug, people who
Biologics.
are on biologics.
Okay, so
Right.
not for the general population, but if you are taking biologics or another immunosuppressant drug, what your doctor might ask you to do is take an RT-PCR first before the vaccine to make sure that you're not currently infected, right? While you're on biologics, and then add to that the vaccine.
Right.
So those are just
Too
some
much
things.
of a challenge to the body.
Yeah, but it's the nice thing is, as she mentioned, the CDC, the World Health Organization, and many dermatological societies have really come up with clear guidelines already on this. So your dermatologist, if you're on biologics, you're seeing one, right? Your dermatologist will be pretty well versed in this. Just make sure, of course, if you're on biologics, double check with your doctor because there might be other factors to consider. Just don't go out and just, get the vaccine. You do need just additional consideration. But yes, you can take it. And you should. Okay.
As a matter of fact, when I had my vaccine Tuesday a week ago, I noticed that the questions that were asked me to fill up to be able to really give all my information there was rather detailed. And it included things like, what would be contributing to my being an immunosuppressed person.
There you go. Okay, so I'd like to get to some questions because some are excellent, and then I'm sure we'll get to this in a bit. Elle asked, is the new Philippine variant, because we have a new Philippine variant, right, of COVID, of coronavirus rather, one of those that develop a skin rash early on?
That's
The-
the question.
Right, so the skin rash development early on, is that also
I
applicable
don't
to the new
think-
variant?
Yeah, I don't think there has been a
It's very new.
yeah, it's quite new. I'm talking about these
Existing ones.
yeah, the existing ones, and a review that I did last night on the skin lesions was dated February
Of 2021.
2021. But still, this would be published articles, and therefore they would probably be back in
Referred to several
2020,
months
late
ago,
latter
yeah.
part of 2020. So
Yeah.
they wouldn't be including that organism yet.
Remember too, these things are mutations of the same virus,
That's right.
right? So we're not talking about novel coronavirus 2, and then all of a sudden a new dengue virus comes in. We're talking about the same virus,
The same virus.
with mutations.
The
So
mutation is within the inside, within
Right.
that gene that's inside.
Right.
And remember that COVID is caused not just by the instructions coming from that DNA and transmitted to its RNA, so that's genetic, but it's also actually a very important part are those spikes that are coming through.
why it's called corona.
That's why
Right,
it's called
on the
corona.
protein spikes. So what I want to, I guess, answer there, El, is the Philippine variant, the UK variant, the South African variant are fairly new, but they are mutations of the same virus. So you're not going to get anything wildly different necessarily in terms of symptoms. So a lot of this we can assume, fairly safely assume for the moment until new research is published. Because remember, the research is trying to catch up with the mutations, right? So, and the research has to be vetted. To make sure it's valid. So it'll take a little bit for some of that research to come out. But it is fairly safe to assume, yeah, a lot of the old symptoms probably apply to the newer variants as well. What, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of the mutations you might notice in terms of virulence, how infectious they are, and how severe they are.
How quickly they spread.
Right, how quickly they spread, but not necessarily wildly different symptoms.
Yeah. You must also remember that vaccines come from different types. You know, if you really think about it, the vaccines that you've been getting as a child, the MRR, the measles, rubella,
MMR, measles, mumps,
mumps
rubella.
and rubella, and the polio and the flu and the pneumococcal and all of that. They're not necessarily the same virus all the
That's
time.
right.
You know, some of them may
Things
actually be
change. Mutations.
similarities to or mutations of, and they still protect you.
Yeah.
You know,
So vaccines are great.
don't worry about this thing that's scaring people about. It's mutated, so I will not. Well, you know, it's still
It is the same virus. It's just gotten a little more contagious or angrier. So in other words, definitely get vaccinated. Jana, with another, your questions give me life, Jana. So, are any of the COVID-19 vaccines safe for someone who has patch tested positive to Phenoxy ethanol? Because the handout I received from my doctor with patch testing indicated that Phenoxy ethanol can sometimes be found in some vaccines.
Right, but I was reviewing again last night the contents of what seems to be a common one is polyethylene glycol, not phenoxy ethanol. That's a different preservative. But it's the kind of thing that you might want to check with your, whoever is giving your vaccine. The one that I had was
The Astro.
the Astra has
The Astra.
polypropylene glycol.
There you go.
Yeah.
Where can Jana find that information, or where
Look
can
up
we find it?
WHO. It's fantastic.
And they list the ingredients of the vaccine. Fantabulous. There we
Yeah.
go. If I find the link later, I'll actually take time and see if I can get the link from her specifically to the page that lists the ingredients of the vaccines. That might be helpful.
One actually said does not contain rubber or peanuts or.
Oh, there you go. Fantastic. Okay. So Joan is asking, is cleaning non-skin surfaces like cell phones or purses or tables with virgin coconut oil effective in disinfecting them?
Yes.
In
Yes.
fact, what's interesting that people forget about virgin coconut oil monolaurin, and I love repeating, alcohol. So studies have shown an efficacy very similar, even higher, right, against alcohol. Virgin coconut oil monolaurin versus alcohol is antiviral, antibacterial, etc. A key difference, alcohol is very drying to the skin. It's not an allergen unless it has, say, fragrance. But alcohol in and of itself is an irritant, which means the more you use it, the closer you are to getting to a threshold where, yes, the skin will react with dryness, etc.
And you break down the barrier.
And you break down the skin's barrier. Monolaurin and virgin coconut oil are waxy, and one is an oil. So they won't dry the skin out, number one. And number two, which I really like, they leave a film. Alcohol evaporates super quickly, remember. These things will actually stay on the skin longer, and the same applies to surfaces. I
And-
would caution though, sorry, go ahead. 'Cause
And
that's
they
more
break
important.
down into the individual fatty acids that actually help contribute towards repair of the barrier, you know. So you're
But also, just I want to double down here, Joan. Do also be careful about what you're wiping the oil on. Remember, the oil does have
Right.
fatty acids, so you might want to check with if that's okay on certain screens. Like, I don't even let people touch. People in VMV know, and they crack up at me all the time. They want to show me something on the screen. I'm like, don't touch the screen, because I don't like finger oils on my screen. I do a lot of graphics, and the oils can be an issue to clean off later. So just make sure that the oil is okay for the surface that you're talking about. Sarge is asking, okay, this is the one. What is your stand with all the different brands of COVID vaccines coming out? Some are saying that this one is much better than this or that because of certain side effects. Should we get ourselves vaccinated regardless of a brand, or wait for a few more months for the arrival of next batches?
what did Dr. Salvania say, which I thought was really great? He said, the vaccine that is available to you is the best brand that you should get and have it done now. Okay. If you look,
Actually, can I just add to that? Dr. Fauci, who I just love, I'm a big Fauci fan. He was on Stephen Colbert the other night, just the other night, like a few nights ago, and he doubled down as well. He's like, the best vaccine is what you can get. He goes, yeah, get the vaccine, whatever it is. So I can put a link to that clip as well later.
Okay.
Sorry, so you were saying.
so the vaccines that are available now are really amazing in that they have been using the newest technology for the developing of vaccines. So this would be, therefore, you have vaccines that, I'll give you an example, the Pfizer, for instance. So there are the vaccines that are based upon the stimulation of brought on by your body reacting to the genetic material of the vaccine. So that when you hear mRNA, that's a gene that's coming from the DNA that's transmitted to the RNA, which then produces the chemicals, the instructions rather, to your
Yeah.
cells to produce a reaction.
It's not like the old vaccines that introduce.
There's only one
Yeah.
old vaccine. Yeah. This was an amazing finding that I realized when I was reviewing the vaccines early this morning, is that there's only one vaccine actually that uses old technology, and that's the Chinese one. The Sinovac
Sinovac.
and the Sinopharm, they are based upon inactivated viruses.
Right.
Similar to
Yeah.
hepatitis A, flu.
Right. So
You
just
know.
just to be clear here, when we say old method, it doesn't mean bad.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean ineffective. The majority of vaccines that most of us get as kids or even as adults
And protection.
are this exist
Polio,
and
you know,
fantastic
rabies.
protection,
Right.
right? If you look at the millions of people vaccinated and how many diseases we've eradicated, thank you, really very few side effects and very effective vaccination, they're all using this quote old technology. So maybe existing technology is the
So
better term, right?
The Sinovac and the Sinopharm are inactivated
Right.
virus. So what does that mean? So the virus has already been killed or made very inactive either by heat, by radiation, or by pressure, by destroying it. So the effectivity, therefore, you can even see it. The effectivity ranges from, because they've been studied in several countries, Brazil, the Philippines, and many other countries. The effectivity is as low as 65% to the highest I saw was 85%. Okay, compare that to the newer technology kind of vaccines that are based on the genes. Example for that would be the Pfizer one, which is as much as 95% effectivity. And the other one is the Moderna, which is also messenger RNA, again, genetic.
Messenger RNA, so again, just to compare, right? The quote, existing technology takes a bit of dead virus, basically, or almost dead virus, introduces it to your system. So your body learns, bad.
Right.
We now don't like that. We are now immune against it, right? This new technology does not introduce any part of that virus.
Mm-hmm.
It basically teaches your genes, your cells to recognize that as a bad
And
thing.
develop
And- and,
the
yeah.
antibodies towards it.
So it's sort of like some biologicals now, or some drugs that are used for chemo, where they, because some of these, okay, really, a bird who really wants to participate. So, some of these drugs. The problem with, say, some cancer cells, some viruses, is they trick your body, right? They basically replicate themselves so that your body does not recognize them as foreign and bad, and so your body's own attack system does
It's
not
dulled.
attack them, right? That's the problem. So this new technology basically unmasks that, teaches your genes, bad, go get them. But it's ultimately your system that's going to get them, right?
So those two that I just mentioned, the Moderna and the what's the first one? Pfizer, are mRNA. Okay, that's genetic. And there's still another one that's still under development and hasn't really been given the complete okay, as at least as far as this article of February 2021, is the Russian one called Sputnik, of course, and that is a double-stranded DNA that they're doing. Okay.
Can I ask you something? Because you mentioned this is low effectivity, 40%, 60%. From everything I've read, that's not a bad efficacy.
No, that's why you.
That's actually really
That's why a
good.
lot of people, a lot of the doctors in Makati Medical, as well as PGH, and some of the other
taking
frontliners who were
Sinovac.
they were given the Sinovac.
Right. I felt that was important to say because some of these numbers I find, unless you read the papers and understand the history of vaccines and how they work, I find can be confusing as a layperson. If I read, oh, this type of vaccine is only 40% effective or only 60% effective,
Right.
that's actually really, really good in vaccine speak.
That's right.
Very good. So they're not to be poo-pooed.
Either.
And again, quoting her earlier, quoting Dr. Fauci, whatever vaccine you can get is the best vaccine for you right now.
Right.
Key differences, again, would be if you have reactions to things that might be in the solution, in which case I'll find that link and I'll put it here in the check back later on our Facebook page, and we'll make sure to add links there of stuff that we've talked about.
Okay,
So,
and
go
the
ahead.
other new technology that is being used by the manufacturers of these vaccines, I find exciting. It's making use of a vector. What's a vector? Making use of some other bug or carrier. In this case, they use adenovirus. What do you call it?
Salsa.
Recombinant adenovirus as a vector. These are the simple viruses that produce a little bit of a common cold or whatever. They're not very serious viruses or don't produce anything at all. They can be used as a vector for the crown, the spike proteins, because these are one of the ones that really also bring out the COVID infection. And so that is vectored in. We have that in the AstraZeneca of the Oxford University. It's also AstraZeneca, Oxford University, that is being done in Korea. It's also the same thing that's being done by the Indian Serum Institute of India, called Covishield. It's the
There you
same
go.
thing, using the adenovirus to be the vector for the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein.
So, two things I want to add here. One, I love that she has this because it's a great prop. And number two, I feel like I want to insert here, when you use things like alcohol or soap, monolaurin or virgin coconut oil, they work differently than other drugs in that it's a physical killing of the virus, right? It's really like rubbing the virus walls until they break down and die. That's how they work, which is different from
This is how they work. That thing is like a capsule of the virus. Inside it's its gene. That is its capsule. These are the spikes of proteins called glycoproteins that penetrate that wall and is connected to the inside that transmits the RNA, mRNA message coming from the DNA. That's clear?
yes,
Okay,
very
great. So, therefore, what the coconut oil does is that I told you this is a lipid capsule, lipid materials.
Fats.
And lipids are fatty acids that are, and the fatty acids of coconut oil are short to medium chain. They are like me. We're compact, we're short, if you were to make me into a fatty acid, I'd be very much quicker. Like in crowds, I can go in between people and then I can go to the front and see what's going on in the parade that people with who are tall can never do. So it's basically the same thing with the fatty acids that you get from the coconut oil. They're short, they're compact, they can make palisades, they can go in between and actually penetrate the wall, the lipid walls of those viruses.
So bringing us back now. So in terms of Sarge's question, honestly, most medical professionals, the CDC, the WHO, Dr. Fauci, all these doctors we talk to are really clear. Whatever vaccine is available to you is the best vaccine for you. Possible exceptions here can be, as Jana was asking, and it's a great question again, if you have allergies, in which case the WHO, and again I'll put the link later, does spell out the ingredients. So you can really look into that and be better guided by your allergist or your dermatologist as to which vaccine you should wait for in particular. If you are immunocompromised or are on immunosuppressive drugs like biologics, yes, you should take the vaccine, but again, with your doctor's guidance, and make sure you are not actively infected before you take it. And in terms of the different vaccines that Sarge asked, a lot of them really differ just in terms of methodology, but they're all really effective. In terms of side effects in particular, this is an important question. Any vaccine has the risk of a side effect, right? When my kids were vaccinated, whenever we left the doctor's office, possible side effects include, we were always told, right? Potential for fever, they might feel a little weak. This was always a thing. And the same applies to these vaccines. There's probably going to be a side effect of, you might feel a little feverish. Some people have reported feeling achy, right? It really depends. But that's why it's also important to look at the ingredients to make sure you don't have a food allergy that these things have an ingredient for.
May I share this, because this is an advice which I learned recently, is that you're educated, you're listening to me speak in English, those who come from the Philippines, for instance, and you're exposed to these kinds of gadgetry, so you have more education than the average bear, and so therefore you understand what we're talking about. May I suggest that you please talk to people who do not have your kind of understanding and being able to logically rationalize and understand what is being talked about by us. Because after I had my vaccine, I then talked with 6 people who were not as well educated. They've been exposed to me, but not very well educated. They haven't really gone through perhaps high school or anything. And I tell you, I had the hardest time trying to convince them that it is
necessary.
safe, it is necessary, and they must have it.
Right.
I was able to finally do it, except for one person who still says, no, I don't want to have it. But you can see how difficult it is, and therefore it is, now that we've given you these ideas, maybe, hopefully you can already accept it, and therefore have it yourself.
Or
and
share a live stream.
Share it, or share this live stream.
Okay, so I want to make sure I get to the other questions. Erica, my palms have become, and thank you, by the way, Joan and Elle, I agree. Show and tell, we got to bring in more props. I totally agree. Erica, my palms, this is on how wonderful this was. My palms have become intensely itchy and it swells sometimes. Could this be because of too much use of alcohol?
It will, if you have itching palms, it's probably something else that you're touching that's dry. Because if it's alcohol,
you tend to rub over.
The skin here is thinner. Yeah. You go like this, the skin here is thinner, and therefore it will react faster than the palms.
Don't you love that? I love these little tips. It's so logical when you think about it, right? But even we get customers,
eventually
or she gets patients where, I used a moisturizer, I'm allergic to it. Look, the left side of my face is messed up. And you're like, yeah, but you applied it all over your face. So it's also important to check where you apply. Alcohol definitely can be drying, definitely over time, and definitely if the alcohol contains fragrance, which is really common, right? But what she's saying is true. It'll take longer here to hit the threshold. An
Because
irritant
it's-
reaction is a matter of threshold, right? And then if you stop using it for a while, you're fine. But I have gotten to the point where I'm really dry here that it feels swollen, like it's hard to do this. Drop us a PM and we can maybe ask more specific questions, but it might not be the alcohol if you have zero symptoms on the sides towards the upper part of the hands, because that would be reacting first. Florence is asking, how will we know whether the skin reaction is from the vaccine or from other causes? I like that question. How would you know? Okay,
The
I get the
a vaccine reaction would be what's called an immediate hypersensitivity reaction. There are two kinds. The immediate hypersensitivity reaction, which usually occurs within the hour after you're exposed to an allergen. So
Is that a type 1?
that's a type 2.
Type 2 reaction, I'm sorry.
Within the hour, if you begin to notice that you have hives and rashes and you're itchy and
That
like
might be from the
that's-
vaccine.
That may be from the vaccine, or because of not necessarily the active
Because
the
of other
vaccine,
things.
but of the chemicals that they have to add to preserve it or to
Right.
whatever. Okay.
So remember, we have a live stream on the difference between, say, food, drug, pollen, dander, asthma, those kinds of reactions, which are type 2 reactions, versus contact dermatitis, which is type 4. If you have food allergies, definitely look at that list, and I'll put the link later. Look at the ingredients list of the vaccine.
Following through with that question, my answer to that question, the delayed reaction is due to your cells now reacting with the proteins being presented to your immune cells to react to. And that's calculated to be something like 7-8 hours after, right? So therefore, what I did, because I'm 81 years old, I have multiple immune, besides being old age, there are other things that make me really immunocompromised. So what I did was, by the 7th hour, because I allowed my cells to meet and greet these proteins, no symptoms whatsoever, I took an anti-inflammatory drug. And
An antihistamine.
no, I didn't even bother with an
I thought you
antihistamine.
did.
Or to people who are very, very allergic, I advise them to also take an antihistamine. And I had no reaction whatsoever. I was happily came home, did teleconsultations with patients, hobnob with my family, with my grandchildren who are 10 and 14. So you can imagine how that is exciting and fun. And I had no reaction whatsoever. So my suggestion to people is therefore to take not just a simple anti-fever medicine, but actually an anti-inflammatory
Like
drug.
an NSAID,
Like, yeah.
non-steroidal
Right.
anti-inflammatory
that you
drug.
can take safely, that
Like
you
an
don't have allergies.
ibuprofen,
Right.
if you're not allergic, of course, right?
And
Okay.
an antihistamine if you're prone to allergies.
Right, and L double down, yeah, immediate response. That's why the 30-minute waiting period after the vaccination.
Exactly.
Exactly, right. Okay, because any response you're going to get, for that type of reaction, you're going to get within the hour.
Correct.
Can I get vaccine? So Sam has an interesting question that's theoretical. Since VCO is excellent as antiviral, antimicrobial, could VCO or monolaurin potentially be turned into a vaccine?
No. No, because it doesn't have that much protein in it.
You need the protein.
Yeah, it is those are just lipids
The
and fatty
action
acids.
of
The action of VCO
yeah,
is
different.
physical.
Yeah, exactly. VCO and monolaurin, it tears the thing apart, right? The wall,
Breaks it down.
It breaks it down. It's not quite the same as being able to deliver a vaccine into the system.
Right.
Either an inactivated vaccine so that the body recognizes it, or to teach those genes to reject that virus.
Correct.
Janelle, this is our last question, is... Oh, I'm happy, Florence. Okay, Janelle is, good morning, Doctora. May I get vaccinated despite being on isotretinoin?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. Isotretinoin's not an
It may even be protective because it is a vitamin A.
There you go. Yeah, the bigger concern, if I'm not mistaken, for isotretinoin is pregnancy,
Yes.
because it's a known teratogen. So that would be the bigger concern, and effects on the liver.
She's so smart, this little kid of mine.
I pay attention. Okay, I think that's our last question for
Done.
today. So I will
Okay.
let you go and get back
Yes.
to work.
Okay.
I love you.
Mwah.
Thank
Love
you.
you. Thank you
for
so
joining.
much for bringing me into this. And thank you to everybody for listening. and spread the word.
There you go. Okay, I'll stick around quickly. I'll make sure that we end well and on time, and also we have a winner to announce. So again, very quickly, folks, please do not forget our preventive measures that the WHO, CDC, etc. are teaching us. They really are effective. So social distancing, wash your hands regularly, VCO monolorant, wear your mask, wear your face shield, and definitely get vaccinated, right? Quoting Dr. Fauci, whatever vaccine you can get is the good vaccine for you, unless you have concerns about allergies, in which case we will post the link later. Look at the ingredients of the vaccine, because it's not the active that's the issue. It might be other things that are in the vaccine. If you'd like a teleconsultation, again, DM us. You know where to find us online, vmvhypoallergenics.com or .ph. You know you can contact us for help customizing recommendations of products you can use based on your particular allergens. And we will, we'll be back next week. Definitely please let us know in the comments anything else you'd like us to do a skin sites session on. And subscribe to our emails, follow us on Facebook and YouTube and Instagram. And announcing the winners of today are Efe, Joan, Ayman Gadayan, and Janelle Chanyunko. So congratulations, you're gonna get this awesome pocket-sized thing. Our frontliner friends really, really love it because they can keep it in their pockets, and so they can reapply throughout the day, which is great for increased disinfection, but also as our hands continue to get dry as we're constantly disinfecting and such, it's such a relief. So on that note, thank you guys so very, very much for joining us again. I really, really just love your questions. I mean, you see, my mom is like a mega head honcho brain who's recognized everywhere, and she frickin' prepares for this because she knows the questions that you're going to have, which is wonderful and I think so helpful to so many others. Thank you, Elle. Also, I will get that ingredient list up. I owed, if I'm not mistaken, Anne or Joy from last week, the blog post. That's on my to-do list today, actually. Otherwise, take care, everybody. Be safe. Please be good about the protocols and safety stuff. And we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.